My husband and I, both in our early 30s, have been together for over a decade and made the decision to not have kids. I like kids, I have nieces and nephews, we just don't want them for our own reasons. He had a vasectomy, which only a few people know about. Our families are aware we don't want kids, as they've asked this before during different major life events, our wedding for instance. We recently bought a 3-bedroom home with a nice yard in a nice area. Excited to show our new home to family and friends, major upgrade to our previous home, we hosted a housewarming. During the party, one of my sibling-in-laws, Alex, made a few indirect comments about all this space. And kids would love it in our house, etc. Eventually they asked point blank when we were having kids. I made a light-hearted joke about it, which is my go-to for this question. Oh, well, I like sushi too much to have to give it up for a pregnancy. Plus not drinking for pregnancy and breastfeeding? No thanks. I tried to make it very light-hearted and laugh it off. Most people just laughed along. That seemed to anger Alex, and I was told children are a joy, and a good mother puts her kids before everything else. I agreed, children are a joy, I like spending time with the nieces and nephews. And obviously I can't be a good mom if I chose sushi over kids, so I just won't be a mom, paraphrased. Still trying to brush it off in a gentle way, because I'm not trying to start a fight by telling them to stop asking in front of everyone, because I know my tone will be seen as rude and abrasive. We move on. But Alex is still annoyed and making little comments in their group about how flippant I am about it and how when it finally happens, then I'll understand. My husband heard this and jokingly said, well, if she gets pregnant, that'll be a problem for the divorce lawyers. That seemed to piss them off more, but they stopped. With holidays coming up, we have not been invited to Alex's usual Halloween bonfire. When husband spoke to his parents, they told him Alex was annoyed we were so careless and callous about our child-free status and to say what we did, and they realized we had taken permanent steps to ensure we never had kids. That we know they had to do if to have kids, etc. And we are AHs to just not care. I feel bad because they did do if and lots of fertility treatments to have their kids. And even then they still had a few miscarriages. I can't imagine wanting kids and struggling to have them and then deal with miscarriages. But at the same time, I'm so tired of justifying living my life how I want. I feel terrible my joke was taken the way it was and that I hurt my IELTS. I truly never meant for that to happen. After the bonfire this weekend, we will be reaching out to have a heart-to-heart, if they'll accept it. Either way, I'll be apologizing for hurting their feelings, let them know I love their kids and them. But I will also be firmly putting down any further attempts to discuss our child-free status, if the conversation is about changing our minds. I have not told them our reasons for being child-free, so I think perhaps if they are willing to listen, I'll explain them and hopefully the conversation can be constructive. This goes back 3 years when my mom and her girlfriend got engaged. My mom put in so much time and energy into organizing this wedding and was so excited. She sent out invites to all our family members for months in advance, and almost everyone confirmed they would be going. Barely a week before the wedding, she received several messages from aunts and uncles who said they won't be going because they had other commitments, despite confirming they'd be there months prior. One of my aunts, my grandma's sister, confronted my mom and said many weren't going because they still didn't agree with the fact that she was marrying a woman, including herself, because it went against her Christian views. Meanwhile, my hardcore Christian grandma was more than happy to walk my mom down the aisle. This upset my mom, but she tried not to let it ruin her wedding. I, however, was furious. Only my grandma, my mom's sister, a few cousins, and another aunt attended the wedding, while my stepmom's entire family came. What really pissed me off was that 2 weeks later, my cousin who lives in a totally different state celebrated her sweet 16, and everyone who made excuses about not going to my mom's wedding made the journey all the way over there and posted pictures all over Facebook. It really broke my mom's heart and just felt like salt in the wound. I swore then that when I got married, everyone who did not show up to my mom's wedding would not be invited to mine. Fast forward to now, me and my girlfriend of 2 years got married first week of March, and I kept my word. The only ones we invited to our wedding was the family that did go to my mom's, and one other aunt who did have a good reason for not being there at the time because she was recovering from surgery. I wanted to clarify that I am in fact a guy. We even invited my stepmom's family too. Obviously my other family members found out and expressed their hurt over not being invited. I called them all out and said if they had a problem with my mom for being who she is, then they had a problem with me, and I wouldn't let toxic people be a part of a special day for me and my wife. My wife stood behind my decision, as did my mom. That still doesn't seem to stop them from thinking it was a move and are turning it into a whole family drama because they think it was unfair to punish them for simply believing in something different. Wow, thank you so much for all the love and support, everyone. My husband and I come from the same background. The only difference is that his mother isn't of that ethnicity, so he wasn't raised in the culture like I was. When we started dating, I helped him reconnect with his roots. This eventually led to him reaching out to his estranged father's family and becoming close with them. I think my mother-in-law has sort of held that against me ever since. Throughout the course of our relationship, she has made multiple comments about how she doesn't like the amount of emphasis I put on my heritage. When we told her I was pregnant with twins, she later said something about not wanting her future grandchildren to care about that stuff like I do. I've learned to ignore her comments because trying to explain myself to her has never helped. And I try to avoid conflicts whenever I can. My husband and I decided that the babies would have a first name from our culture, and their middle name would be a typical American name. My parents did the same thing with my name too, so it was just a continuation of that tradition. My mother-in-law ended up seeing texts between me and my husband where we said the middle names. But she assumed that we were talking about first names, so she went out and got the babies matching sweaters, with the names printed on the front of them. She showed the sweaters to me after they arrived. And I thanked her for the gift but didn't correct her on the fact that those were the middle names. I was sort of peeved that she had snooped through text messages to try to find out the names before we told her anyway. So I didn't want to give her their first ones on top of that. Last night when she was over at our house, she told me how relieved she was that we had chosen normal names for her grandchildren, and not a ridiculously difficult to pronounce name like mine. My husband asked what she was talking about. She repeated herself and he told her that actually, the babies did have names just like mine and he expected her to learn to say them. She brought up the text messages and the sweaters she bought, and then my husband explained our plan for their names. She got really pissed at me after that. Said I let her look like a fool for accepting the sweaters instead of telling her the actual names, which we still haven't shared with her, and that she'd be calling them by their middle names since that's what she knows them as now. My husband ended up asking her to leave. And after she was gone he said he wasn't upset at me or anything, but that he thinks I should have just told her she had the wrong info, instead of lying. I am a hiring manager at a tech company and I was hiring for summer internships a little while ago. We had a guy, about 19 years old, applying for a summer internship between his freshman and sophomore years of college. It was a virtual interview over Zoom because of COVID. A minute or two in, when I was introducing myself, his mom came in and introduced herself and started talking about her son's work ethic. I thought it was a little strange. I said something polite about wanting to hear from him. She just didn't get the hint and kept coming into camera frame during the interview and interrupting her son to answer questions for him. I asked a few technical questions which he seemed to answer well and then cut the interview fairly short. I thought that was all over and done with until I'd gotten an email from a woman, a month later, asking about her son's application. She seemed offended he hadn't gotten an acceptance or rejection. It bothered me. I felt bad for the kid honestly. Way back when I was a teenager, my mom used to pull the same shit. But luckily she only did that when I was 15 and working for a day camp. Not when I was an adult applying for engineering jobs. But I felt like this poor kid was getting his chances ruined because his mom wasn't giving him the chance to apply on his own. I sent an email back saying I was not at liberty to send information about an application to anybody but the applicant. I also asked HR to send an email to the kid saying sorry, but we were not making him an offer. It is something we usually do, but his rejection email must have slipped through the cracks with all the COVID craziness. Anyway, after we sent that, I got a phone call from his mom. She had a forwarded copy of the email, and she was demanding answers. I said that I could not comment on the guy's performance in the interview to her as she was not the applicant. If he wanted to reach out to me, I was happy to give him some feedback. However, I could say that regardless of his performance, her presence in the interview took him out of consideration for the position. We were looking for an independent and self-driven person for the position, and for that reason, it is important to see an applicant speak for themselves, follow up themselves, etc. I also said that, as a piece of advice, every hiring manager I've met in my career who sees someone other than the applicant answering questions during an interview, following up on the applicant's behalf, etc., would also put their resume in the "do not hire" pile. Since, while the applicant may be skilled and motivated, they need the ability to demonstrate those traits themselves. She blew up at me over that, kinda cussing me out to the point where I hung up.